Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special meeting of the Lansing School District Board of Education. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Dr. Beverly?
Present.
Dr. Boddy? Dr. Burrows? Ms. Hodgen? Mrs. Lawrence?
Present.
Mrs. Lilgy? Mr. Lopez? Dr. Rodriguez? Mrs. Willis? Quorum is present.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Burrows does send his regrets and apologizes for not being able to join us this evening. I did say Dr. Burrows, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any additions to the agenda? I would like to just add one item, and I know there's been a lot of talk about coronavirus in particular today, and I know our superintendent has been in a lot of conversations about that, so I wanted to get a quick update from him before we start our interviews this evening.
Thank you, President Lawrence. We have spent the better part of this week really discussing this issue and looking at all the possibilities and making plans and contingencies. Just got off a conference call right before this meeting with the Ingham County superintendents, and we had representatives from Michigan State and LCC, and Ingham County Health Department was on there. We are looking at lots of different options right now, and I feel strongly that, for example, when Michigan State closed today, Michigan State's in a much different position as a post-secondary institution than the K-12 districts are. So we need to be a bit more cautious, I think, as we go along. And we're certainly not going to put anybody in danger. We sent out some information to staff and parents yesterday. We'll have something else going out today or tomorrow, and we're talking about some other things, some other actions we're going to take. So we're looking at not only looking at whether we should have school, but if we don't have school, how do children get the nutrition they need, and how do staff get the things that they need? So we're making plans as we go along, and when we have more information, we'll certainly let you know. That's it.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Sinacropi. Moving on to public comment. Seeing none. Oh, seeing one.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Marty Jordan, and I'm a parent of a first grader in the Lansing School District. First, I want to thank the school board for voting behind closed doors last week not to extend Dr. Coscarella's contract with the district, and for accepting the investigators' findings. So we certainly appreciate that. Second, I'm sure that you have a slate of questions that you're planning to ask superintendent candidates this evening, as well as for tomorrow evening. But if you don't already have a question pertaining to sexual harassment or assault, I ask that you consider asking the following question of all candidates. What is your plan to prevent sexual harassment, sexual violence, and foster a culture of consent in the Lansing schools for students and employees? Again, I'll repeat that question. What is your plan to prevent sexual harassment, sexual violence, and foster a culture of consent in the Lansing schools for students and employees? So I'm asking that you add that question to your slate of questions if you don't already have something similar. In particular, please be on the lookout for candidates' responses to what they've done in the past to foster effective training around consent and Title IX compliance. How have they and how will they ensure that consent and bodily autonomy are infused in education levels K through 12? And how will they plan to support individuals that have been the most historically oppressed and marginalized, including LGBTQ youth, students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, students of color, and others? So thank you for considering adding that question. Thank you.
Thank you, excuse me, thank you, Dr. Jordan. Welcome to our community members who are with us tonight. Thank you for being here with us this evening and for joining us for the first round of interviews to find the Lansing School District's next superintendent. Please note that members of the audience who would like to provide feedback may complete an interview feedback form following each interview. The forms are back in the table in the back, and after completion will be copied and distributed to all board members. I, as board president, will be asking all questions of our interviewees tonight and tomorrow evening as well. Now we will proceed to our first interview of the evening with Dr. Marguerite Vanden Wyndgaard.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Please forgive my back. Are we shaking hands or bumping elbows? Well, I did just get off 2 planes, so it's probably a safe bet.
Welcome, Dr. Vanden Wyndgaard.
Wine.
Vanden Wyndgaard.
Yep.
Thank you for being with us this evening. Following the interview questions, you will have the opportunity to make concluding remarks and ask questions as time allows.
Okay.
We've had the opportunity to review your resume. Please tell us how your background and experiences make you a good fit to be our next superintendent.
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I truly appreciate it. I'm originally from Michigan. I'm from the western side in Rockford when it was a small town. And there's a synergy around the opportunity to come back to your home state and try to change and challenge the lives of children through education. I've had a wealth of opportunities in a variety of settings, as you've already read. But the opportunity to lead from a student-first perspective, the opportunity to build it from an equity perspective, the opportunity to challenge ourselves to work collaboratively, and then out of all of that, reciprocal accountability. One of the things you will find for me is I understand systems that are in a capital city. And while many people will think that any school district is like any other school district and urban means urban everywhere, being a leader in a capital district is a totally different ballgame. And because I've had that experience, I think that makes me a little bit different as I recognize the political work that has to be done, all the nonprofits that are involved. Everyone wants to be a part of Lansing School District. And because of that, you have to have experience in how to navigate all of those people. And so I think that makes me a little bit different. And the opportunity to come home, I have to admit, sounds pretty good.
Thank you. Please share an example of a time you have led a sustained multi-year improvement initiative. Be specific regarding the situation, the task at hand, your specific role, and the outcome.
In the City School District of Albany, which is racially segregated, high unemployment, high poverty, I was in the role of superintendent. And when I arrived, our achievement gap was 34 point difference. While that was how I entered, one of the things that I was able to do was garner community support through fireside chats, gather that information to feed the school improvement plan, the district improvement plan that we're going to build. And with the school board, myself, and the community, we created a strategic plan for how we're going to close that gap. Out of those 3 years, we concentrated on instruction. Out of those 3 years, we concentrated on principal leadership as partners in instructional leadership. Moving the principal from regulatory management to instructional leader, meaning I expected them to be in the classrooms 50% of their day. Meaning, we helped them learn how to look for effective instruction. We taught them how to help them give powerful feedback. We were able to move the organization around that in community engagement, leaders and teachers. And as a result, the achievement gap within the time I was there was already shrunk by 19%. So as fast as we could move, the achievement gap was able to begin to be closed. And I'm very proud of that work because it didn't take much time.
Thank you. Managing vision and purpose involves anticipating future trends, creating a compelling vision, and communicating that vision. Describe a situation that conveys your capability in this area.
Setting the vision for the district is the work that you and I do together. That's our job. And one of the strategies that we always talk about is to make sure that everybody knows what that vision is. And so I've been able to do that in any role that I played. Obviously, as a deputy superintendent in Patterson, I have a superintendent. He sets a vision, and it's my job to make sure it gets facilitated throughout the organization. In the role of superintendent, my job with you is to create that vision. But part of creating that vision has no legs without the infrastructure to support it. In other words, if we're going to be the best urban district, which I said in Albany, we're going to be the best urban district by 2020. We're not quite there. But we're also going to be the best place to work and learn. So in order to have the best place to work and learn, then I had to create the infrastructure in which actually adults care about each other. I have to create the infrastructure in which adults work together collaboratively. I have to build the organization in which we not just talk about things that are in our building, but actually we created professional development that allowed building leaders to be in other buildings so they could learn what it was to be an elementary teacher when I've been in high school for a long time. So they could learn the other way around, to be in elementary and then go to high school, what that means. And in order to do that, you have to create the infrastructure that allows adults to work together. Because culture and climate is all driven by adults. And building that network, working with unions, working with everyone in the organization is the only way that that happens. And it's the hardest work that a superintendent has to do. They'll always talk about children are easier. As adults, we're kind of cranky sometimes. But that's the work that has to be done. And that's some of the work that I've been able to do. That's professional development, obviously. Building community engagement. Creating forums for you, if you have something that's important for you, and we do it together. Highly visible, high engagement.
I'm just going to give my board colleagues a moment to catch up on observations. Please tell us what the term culturally competent means to you. Give an example of how you demonstrate this characteristic and your experience in bringing a diverse group of people to consensus on a difficult issue.
Cultural competency is the ability to build relationships, create and strengthen relationships across what would be perceived as a societal-driven norm. It means that for the staff, if it's predominantly white, we must have the ability to understand fully the experience of our children who are not. To be able to understand and not excuse, but create a relationship across those artificial boundaries to make sure that our kids are successful. Cultural competency is something that that in the United States we have to learn. It's something that doesn't lend itself naturally because we live in a segregated society. But it's something that I have provided leadership with all across the country, honestly. And in so doing, it can go from how we talk about leadership, how we build an equitable system for access. It could be around policy. Does our policy actually demonstrate cultural competency? It could go from instruction. Am I able to bring the children's lives into instruction? It could be with our aides and how they provide support for students. It can be with our bus drivers and how they actually treat children on the bus. And do you allow children to self-segregate on your bus? Or do you treat children differently because of the color of their skin, second language, special ed, whatever that is? So that's the work that we have to do from the top all the way through the organization in order for us to demonstrate cultural competency. For myself, I'm in education. I'm an African-American female. There aren't very many of us around in senior leadership positions, and so I have to demonstrate cultural competency all the time. It's how I have to live my life, if in fact I'm going to be successful in the positions and roles that I'm playing. And so for me, cultural competency is a natural piece of work that is how I am. Bringing that to life and making sure it helps others is the work that we have to do together. You asked, there was a tail on the question about that wasn't quite connected. Can you tell me the tail?
Your experience in bringing a diverse group of people to consensus on a difficult issue.
I would say it was the work that we did in a wealthy suburban district that had a large Somali population. And the city then was segregated as a result. We had a gated community in which the NFL and NBA lived, and we had everybody else like me. And that dichotomy played out in our schools. So one of the most difficult things that I've had to do is work with, at that time I was like a deputy superintendent, but work to provide leadership as we decided to change the boundaries for where children went to school. Now, you know that's a leg on the three-legged stool for a superintendent, and I know that Sam will tell you, and that's a leg that usually cuts the person out because we're going to change the school boundaries. I know you don't have that language any longer here, but we were going to change the school boundaries because we were going to diversify our schools. That was the most difficult, tumultuous process of community engagement, internal engagement that I've ever gone through. But the good news is the work was done and they haven't gone back.
Tell us how you maintain visibility and accessibility for staff, parents, and community groups.
I think actually that's one of my strengths, and part of it is literally managing the calendar. I know that sounds silly, but you have to manage a calendar in a way that allows people to do that. When I would enter here, I would probably do fireside chats again, in which community members can invite. If you can get 15 people in your living room, I'll show up and we'll talk about schools. That was how I entered the district, and it's how it's worked for me in every place I've gone. And then I would be dependent upon you to talk about the who's who in which we really want to engage. I would hope that you would be honest, someone who's not quite as happy to work with us as we would like them to be, and so we've got to begin those negotiations. And then you write your calendar, and you make sure all these folks are there. And I would get it done in the first 90 days. You have to hit the ground running. So that's part of an entry plan for me when I think about that. It's a part of how we begin building that network of folks in those visible sections, visible community engagement sections. Part of what I always ask the building leaders to do is give me their dates in which there are high-profile things that I need to see and do. Because I can't be in every building every day at every event. That's impossible. But every building leader knows where I need to be and when. And we take those dates as well. And then you fill the calendar. And you don't miss. And if you're going to be there at 8 o'clock for Dr. Seuss read-along, then you be there at 8 o'clock for Dr. Seuss read-along.
Often we learn from successfully facing challenges or experiencing mistakes or failures. Please share a time when this was the case for you. What did you learn from the experience? How did you apply what you learned?
Can I hold on that one? I'm going to answer it, but I would love to go to the next question before I have to answer that one.
Sure.
Thank you.
Please describe how you would work to create a learning and working environment that is welcoming, inclusive, and increasingly diverse. How would you make sure that this is supported across the district and community?
Say the last part again, please.
How would you make sure that this is supported across the district and community?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the whole thing?
Please describe how you would work to create a learning and working environment that is welcoming, inclusive, and increasingly diverse. How would you make sure that this is supported across the district and community?
Well, you already have a learning environment that appears to be inclusive. I have never seen as many diverse student pictures up in a variety of places that are published, not only on the website, but they're published in newspapers and journals, et cetera. So the inclusion and the inclusiveness is clearly obvious within at least the front-facing that the public sees. In order for us to continue to diversify our workforce, we have to have a creative recruitment strategy in order for that to happen. We have to make sure that the community is open for and things are available to our more diverse candidates. And so as we work on cultural aspects that a person might want as a candidate, we have to make that visible as well. And so, for example, many HR websites will have a list of distinct foods, distinct churches, distinct hair, distinct whatever that they think of. It'll be right on the website. We are welcoming all of you, and gosh, look over here. Here's where we have to offer you in Lansing. So it can also begin in how we recruit. How you bring all of that into being is around, I would use surveys, of course, within the organization, surveys within the community, and they've got to line up. If, in fact, the community doesn't believe that this is an inclusive environment because we believe that it's okay to be mean to other people as adults and kids, then we have to have a strategy in which to address those situations. But part of the dilemma is within that organization, you must create an accountability system. Because vision without accountability is just a dream. So that accountability system has to hold building leaders accountable for culture and climate, has to hold building leaders accountable for student achievement, obviously. We have to have a way in which our parents can talk to us about their experience with our leadership. So you have to not only have the recruitment side, not only the cultural piece, and maybe it's a Golden Apple Award, or maybe it's that sort of situation where we're actually calling out people who are doing stellar work. But you also have to have an accountability arm with it. Because without that accountability, the surveys mean nothing. If I'm not going to hold someone accountable, your parents are all saying A, B, and C, and I'm not going to hold anyone accountable for that, then it doesn't matter. We can talk until we're green. It won't work. So that entire system has to be in place. And as part of my role in Paterson, New Jersey, that was part of my charge, was culture and climate across for 33,000 students and 5,000 employees. So that was part of the work that I had to do. And so it went from policy to performance. And that was how we started to build that climate.
How do you recruit, develop, and lead a management team? Give us an example of how you've done this in the past.
Mm-hmm. We, not only in Paterson, but in Albany, had to fill several senior leadership positions. In New York, there's a traditional way in which you do that through an online system. In Paterson, we actually went to career fairs that were throughout New Jersey in order to recruit that staff. We also, whenever a staff member went to a conference, we asked them to collect cards. Who did you see? Who did you hear? And how are we going to bring them back? And that was a handshake way in order for us to meet people that were already in the field doing work that we needed them to do in our school district. So all of those strategies worked really well, and I've always been able to fill those particular positions. One of the things that we do have to talk about, though, in that process, I cannot hire someone who doesn't believe in equity and access and social justice. I cannot hire someone that does not believe students come first. I cannot hire someone that doesn't believe that we're going to work better collectively and as opposed to isolation. And I can't hire someone that will not be held accountable. And so those are the underpinnings of how I live my life and how I expect to lead. And therefore, everyone we're looking for has to fit into that mold. And I can grow them. I don't mind if you're a rookie. Let's mold and grow. But that's the work that we have to do. And then everyone in administration's job is to build the capacity of the person that reports to them. And so when you talk about mission and vision and all those aspects, that's how we do it. It's through building the capacity of someone that's reporting to you. Even if it's your assistant who's answering phones and doing all sorts of things like that, that assistant has to play an important role in your life. You have to train them too. She's about student first. What are you coming to talk about? is the question you're going to ask her today going to actually change children's lives, or are you just coming here to just talk? She's in the building right now. She can't talk right now, but she will be available at this time. That's how you build and grow that culture of learning, that culture of climate, that culture of giving. Those are the people that we recruit then into it in order for them to serve in a similar capacity.
Describe how you go about engaging and affirming staff members.
Well, first, I'm visible in buildings. They're also part of the calendaring that has to occur. And I tend to show up at different times during the day. I don't go to the same school every time at the same time. I'm not looking for a dog and pony show. I'm looking for real life. And I'm looking for folks that are driving change for children's lives. So one of the ways that we can certainly talk about them is in a quarterly. We have a quarterly report that goes to the community, and we highlighted key people. One of the things that I did in convocation that occurred every fall was I had our data person find the teachers who had, I think I set the minimum like 20% change in student outcomes. And that way, everybody had an opportunity to demonstrate that. And then we created a slideshow. And when staff came in, this running slideshow was going of all these staff members in a variety of settings showing that. And I would even say that our custodial staff and kitchen crew loved me more than the teachers did. Because I had no problem after the picnic racking chairs like everyone else and cleaning up the grounds like everyone else and putting things away. And they would say to me, what are you doing? This is, we got this, Dr. V, we got this. I'm like, oh, come on, I have 2 arms, got 2 legs, I can lift a chair or 2, I can do this work. And so I think I was able to build relationships and highlight high-level folks that were doing great work. I did it through convocation and a quarterly report. But I also got information from principals who this quarter is just, going like gangbusters, and they would tell me, and I just write a thank you note. People just want to feel like they're being honored. And a thank you note works.
How do you go about making decisions on controversial issues?
Well, first of all, depending on the issue, I gather all the information that I can. And I also gather feedback from all that are impacted. So it's a small group, though. I'm not talking about, a massive committee. If it's controversial, you need to keep it small. But you have to look at all of the facts around whatever that particular issue is. And then you have to have a decision. Now, if it's a controversial issue, I'm assuming we are all in the same room to talk about it. Because if there's a major controversy, you're part of the team. You have to have information. We can't do this in isolation because it's a controversial, that's all of us. So whether it is, and I don't know what your traditions are for meetings, but whether it is information that's going to you in a packet, whether it's information that's going to you through 2-by-2 meetings, I don't know what your tradition is, but that's how we would have to communicate around that. And then the decision is always, is the decision that's going to be made have an impact, diminish or hurt student access for success? That's the question. The decision that we make, will it have an impact and diminish the opportunities for student success? That's how we frame all those decisions. And then we walk through ramifications. And then we create a communication plan. Because part of the problem is often our communication folks are blindsided and are left out of the conversation. And so we create a communication plan on that, whatever that is. Whether it's TV, media, whether it has to be a press conference, whether it has to be a memo that goes out. We decide that all of that with communication. And then we give our rationale, you make the decision, and then you move forward.
Tell us what budget development process you use and how you gain broad support for the final result.
In all of our districts that I've been involved with, the governor makes his pronouncement in January, and that sets the budget season forward. Through that process, we've already had begun in the fall doing what I call academic return on investment processes. So all programs had to already have gone through that, meaning a program would say, our program will change the English language acquisition by 1 year in 6 months. So that program then has to say, this is our budget, these are the students that are being served, and then what are the results? As we do that process, what happens is you find out the programs that you thought were doing really great actually aren't. And then we have to talk about how we're going to reinvest those funds in another way. And so in the front side, in the fall, we've done all of those steps. This is the academic return on these programs. This is what's happening here. This is how transportation has changed. This is what's happening with food service, et cetera. We've done all that in the fall. By the time the governor makes his announcement, then we have a pretty good idea on where we want to reinvest. And then, of course, we're going to find out if the governor is going to actually fund schools. Once that is done, then the process with the school board is for us to talk about the reinvestment of funds. We need to reinvest these funds, these funds, human capital, programmatic capital. We need to reinvest those over here. We believe that these will have a dramatic increase on student achievement because we can do it this way. And all of that information is created in a packet in which then when we go for all the community meetings, we can just be upfront. Here's where we are, here's where we want, here's how we want to reinvest. Here's if we decide we're not going to reinvest, this could potentially be the result. And our state votes in May. And so then once May rolls around, then they vote up or down. And then we have contingency plans if, in fact, it does fail. I have not had a failed budget in any district I've ever been in, because we're upfront about what we want to do and how we want to invest our funds.
What does an effective relationship between the board and superintendent look like, and how do you cultivate such a relationship?
Well, that would be a big part of the entry plan. You would probably get tired of me in the first 90 days. But that's where we get to do 2x2s or whatever you would ask for, Madam President, and how we negotiate that and how we talk about that. But that's a lot of the pre-work that we would do. And then again, we schedule those things out as we move forward. If you are used to 2x2s, then we continue with that process. If you're used to committee structures, and that's the only way in which we communicate, we would do that. We would negotiate that together to decide how we're going to do that work. But that's a big part of the entry plan. That has to be done, almost as soon as a person is hired. That's when that work begins. And then it continues in whatever manner that we decide. It's a mutual, how do we say it? Mutually designed way in which we do that, and every district is different. In New Jersey, I was used to 2x2s, and that's what we did. In Eden Prairie, she did 2x2s, and there were no cabinet members present. In Patterson, there were cabinet members present. In Albany, there was no 2x2s. It was always full group, never individual. So every board is different. I would take your cues on that and build it in a way in which we believe that we can be most effective.
Tell us about your experience in the development and implementation of one specific program change or initiative. What processes did you use? How did you involve others?
In New York, it's a little bit different. We have schools that are in need of improvement, et cetera. But we also had schools that were called receivership schools. And that was a process in which you had either 1 year or 2 years, sometimes 3, in order to not be taken over by a public charter, a private entity, or the state itself. I had one of the middle schools that was on a 1-year track. We got the information in the spring, and we knew that by the following spring that middle school had to make dramatic changes. So one of the requirements and one of the things that was important was he had community engagement. So community was involved in decision-making around what are the steps that we're going to take to improve this school. The building principal, of course, was being held accountable for the instructional strategies that were implemented, to talk about the use of time, because they really worked on time management, and they didn't move to block scheduling or anything like that, but how they use the time during the day to ensure students had support that they need in order for them to be successful. They also then engaged then with the State Department, because there was a State Department person that was assigned, and so we had to work with the State Department person to make sure that for them, their I's were dotted and the T's are crossed. I'm not in charge of what they had to do, but I had to make sure that we gave them the information they needed so that they could demonstrate difference for them. And then within the building, there were volunteers and community support and high levels of engagement, and that building was off the receivership list in 1 year.
What unique skills or experience do you bring to this position, and how will the Lansing School District be served by this?
Well, I think because I have had experience in suburban and urban districts, because I have had experience at the State Department of Education, because I have come from another capital district, all of those things will have an incredible impact for Lansing because I have a full understanding of how those things work together. And sometimes how those things don't. And so I think those experiences, and of course, my scholarship in urban education, my understanding of urban education as a leader, all play a significant role in moving Lansing forward. You have every best practice under the sun in your district. I hope you know that. If you don't know that, I'm telling you, you have everything. And now we have to catapult learning. So all of the work that you've done, Ames Web and MAPS and others, are all in place. And so what I will bring, I think, is an understanding of how they work together. And for the teachers that are worried, we have to talk about what we're going to perhaps remove from their plates. Because part of what I'm wondering about is, do we have initiative fatigue? And if we do, then how do we help that? And again, the only reason why that I would understand that is because if you work at the State Department, you know, we're always pushing stuff onto school districts until the school district says, I'm done, don't do this to me anymore, right? So I understand how that can happen. And I think that systemic work, understanding how the connectors between and among, and having a wealth of opportunity in leading in urban spaces, I think that helps a lot and will help lead Lansing in a new, bold direction.
Tell us how your previous professional experiences in education have influenced you as a leader.
Oh my. I think what they've done for me, whether, you know, currently I'm at a university or at a college, or whether it was at the State Department or county office, school district, what they all have done for me is identify for me the position in which I know I can have a dramatic impact to change children's lives, and that's the Office of the Superintendent. What all of those did for me was say, I want to be closer to schools and not just help and serve, but to extend and accelerate student and staff success. You can't do that at the State Department of Education. I wouldn't give that up for anything. I learned how to manage 610 school districts in the state of Ohio, 21 urban school districts, 50,000 students. I mean, I wouldn't give that up for anything. But what I do know is that when I am leading in a central office position, and I get to talk about teaching and learning, and I get to talk about the role of assessment, and I get to talk about how transportation needs to work stronger and better and faster and more efficient. I know when I get to change children's lives because we decided we're going to integrate our schools. When I get to talk about how we're going to challenge early childhood folks and lift them up. They actually should be the highest paid employees in the district, I'm just saying. They need to be lifted up because they're working with our tiniest learners. I get to do that? Are you kidding? What all those jobs taught me was I love being superintendent. That's what they taught me. Because I get to change the world. And that's why I'm here. I got a little excited, Madam President, sorry. No, thank you.
Yep. I'm going to go back to my previous question.
Please.
Often we learn from successfully facing challenges or experiencing mistakes or failures. Please share a time when this was the case for you. What did you learn from the experience? How did you apply what you learned?
I think that if I could go back and relearn working with a variety of school boards in my life, I would have, because I'm a systems person, it never occurs to me that if this is a good idea, that someone would think it's a bad idea just because I said it. And so you have to not just build the board relationship, it takes individual relationships as well. And every individual is different. And I think because I was so concerned about making sure that we worked as an entity, that I don't know if I did a good enough job with some key board members to understand exactly what they were looking for. And it's knowing the individual and knowing the group are two different things. And so that's really what I learned from that experience. And again, I would not trade it for anything. I'm very proud of our record. But I think I missed something in working individually as well as the corporate. And that I took that away and will certainly go about that differently.
We appreciate your interest in becoming our next superintendent. Do you have any questions for us? Anything we haven't talked about?
I always wonder, because you've gone through a community engagement process in order to move candidates forward and understand what the community is looking for, and I always wonder, were you surprised by anything the community said in this process? And anything I might want to think about if I'm lucky enough to move forward?
I imagine you've probably read some news articles about what has been occurring in our district.
Just a few.
I think it's safe to say that we were very surprised by how the last 6 months has played out. And we did not anticipate being in the position that we're in right now. Obviously, as a neighboring community to Michigan State University, we've had a lot of unfortunate, horrible incidents in the past several years. And we, I think as a board, we underestimated the amount of healing that our community had gone through. And we have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair, colleagues? And if anybody would like to add a brief statement, I invite you to. Okay.
Just something to share is you asked the question specific to the feedback that we received. And one of the things that we appreciate about this opportunity is to really get feedback about what the community would like to see. And I don't know like how much of a stats person you are or not, but when asked the question about whether the community is happy about where we're going or whether they would like to see things change, it was almost a 50-50 split,
Right.
which our stats guy is not here. He would talk about the validity of that and what it
Right.
means and if it's, we should actually go back and call the question.
Right.
But I think the fact that it is split and it was non-conclusive essentially as an answer. And so the fact that that is something that we're walking into regardless of what happens next, I think is something that's important for candidates to be aware of.
And that is why community members are looking at our selection of the next superintendent, because that person, whoever it is, needs to be aware and have a plan
Yeah,
to address issues like that.
yeah, yeah.
The other thing I'll want you to know about Lansing is that I grew up in the city of Lansing, as did many of my colleagues here, and the district and the city of Lansing love each other. And the community tells us when we're wrong, but also the community has our back. And nobody's prouder of the Lansing School District than people who live in the city of Lansing. And we're a blue-collar community, and we feel it, and we have, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but we kind of have a chip on our shoulder. And we love our city, we love our district, and we are looking for the right person to, as you said, catapult us into the future.
That's it.
So again, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
I have one more page of my script.
Oh, she sounded like she was done. I'm like, okay.
I was, but I forgot that I had this last page. The board is interviewing a number of candidates, and we will contact you if you are selected as a finalist. Thank you for coming. We enjoyed meeting with you. Audience, I encourage you to submit your feedback forms and turn them in to our MASB consultants, Jay and Greg, who are in the hall, in the aisleway. We will have a 3-minute recess. Grab a snack and get back to your spots.